Hello everyone! In this video, we will be solving system of equations in word problems. This is the first part. I will put the link of the second part in the description box below. Let's take this first example right here. Gwen and Jorel are selling fruit for a school fundraiser. Customers can buy small boxes of oranges and large boxes of oranges. Jorel sold 5 small boxes of oranges and 8 large boxes of oranges for a total of $170. While Gwen sold 9 small boxes of oranges and 10 large boxes of oranges for a total of $240. Find the cost each of 1 small box of oranges and 1 large box of oranges. Now, we have steps in order that we can solve word problems involving system of equation. The first step is to define the variables. So there are 2 variables that we can have in here. The first one is the small boxes of oranges. So that's the first one right here. So we can write step 1 here. So we are defining the variable. So for small boxes of oranges, let's assign that as letter S. And the other variable would be large boxes of oranges. So we will represent that as letter L. Now, others might ask, like, do we have an S and L every time? It depends on the problem. You can actually use X or Y for this. Again, these are variables. You can assign them in any letter. Okay, now we're ready to move on to the second step. The second step is to set up the system of equations and eliminate one of the variables, then solve for the other variable. Let's look at Jorel's case here. So he was able to sell 5 small boxes of oranges. So I can go ahead and underline this. So 5 small boxes of oranges, 8 large boxes of oranges, and the total is 170. So to set this equation up, that would be 5 small boxes of oranges. So I can go ahead and say 5S. And then and 8 large boxes of oranges. So 5S plus 8L, that's 8 large boxes. The total for it is 170. So this is the equation for Jorel's case. Now let's move on to Gwen's case. So Gwen was able to sell 9 boxes of small boxes of oranges. So that's 9 of them. So 9S plus 10 large boxes of oranges. So I'm going to go ahead and write 10 large or 10L, and the total for it was 240. Our task is to determine how much is each one small box of oranges cost. So how much is this one small box and how much is one large box of oranges? In order that we can eliminate one of the variables, I'll give you the trick. What are we going to do is we are going to multiply both equations by these numbers. First, the first equation will be multiplied by the first coefficient here. So we're going to multiply this by 9. And the second equation will be multiplied by this first coefficient. That's 5. So then we go ahead and distribute this to each one of them. Now, please remember, because others missed this part, they only distributed to the first and they missed to distribute it to the rest. That is not the correct way how to do it. It has to be distributed to all of them. So in this problem that we have here, we can go ahead and rewrite it down here after we distributed it. So that would be 9 times 5s would be 45s. So I'm going to write 45s here. And then I will distribute the 9 to 8L. So 9 times 8L would be a positive 72L. And then I will distribute the 9 to 170. So that's 9 times 170 would be 1,530. And then I will do the same thing for the bottom here. So 5 times 9s would be 45s. And then we have not 5 times 10L would be 50L. So that's plus 50L. And 5 times 240. So we multiply that. And that is equal to 1,200. So then from here, we go ahead and subtract these 2 equations. So we are going to subtract this so that we can eliminate the s. So I will subtract it. So 45s minus 45s is a 0. So we already eliminated the s. So we're left with L. So 72 minus 50 would be 22L. And that is equal to 1,530 minus 1,200 is 330. And so we can divide both sides by 22. So divide this by 22. Divide this by 22. So then we are left with our L is, so I can go ahead and show the work up here. So our L is, that's going to be 330 divided by 22 is 15. So that's gonna be $15, which means that one large box of oranges would be $15. And we're ready to move on to step 3. Step 3 is to plug in the value solved in step 2 to one of the original equations to solve for the other variable. So I'm just gonna label that up here, step 3. So we already have solved the L. So then we can go ahead and use one of the equations, the original equation. So any of these would work. So let's use the second equation. So I have here 9s plus 10L is equal to 240, and then we can go ahead and plug in the value for the L that we solved, which is 15. So that's gonna be 9s plus 10, change it into parentheses, and that is equal to 240. And then we put in the L, which is 15. So I put in the 15 right there. So then I can go ahead and do the math here. So 9s plus 10 times 15 is 150 equals 240. So then from here, we want to solve for s. So we're going to subtract 150 from both sides, minus 150. So then we can go ahead and cross this out. So we're left with 9s is equal to, that's going to be 240 minus 150 is 90. And then we divide both sides by 9 so that we can solve for s. So divide this by 9, divide that by 9. So our s value would be, so I'm just going to go ahead and write that up here. So our s is 10. So 90 divided by 9 is 10. So I can go ahead and say that's $10. $10 for the small box of oranges. So what do these value mean? So first, the L is the cost of the large box of oranges, and then the S here is the price for the small box of oranges. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own, and when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over the problem here. So in a farm, there are rabbits and chicken. Suppose there are 80 heads and 220 legs in total. How many rabbits and chickens are in the farm? So first step is to define the variable. So we go ahead and just define them. So if we look at the problem here, we have, we're looking for the number of rabbits and the number of chickens in the farm. So we can go ahead and write step 1. We can represent rabbit as letter R. So this represents rabbit. And then C represents the chickens. Okay, so the second step that we're going to do is to set up the system of equation and eliminate one of the variables, then solve for the other variable. So I'm going to label this as step 2 right here. So as you can see in the problem, suppose there are 80 heads. So that's going to be, if we add the number of rabbits and the number of chicken, we would be able to get 80 heads. So that would be rabbit plus chicken would be 80 heads. Now, it says here that there are 220 legs in total. Now, please remember that rabbits, so I'm just going to write here, we remember this part right here. Since we're talking about legs here, we remember that rabbit has 4 legs. And chicken has 2 legs. Okay, now we can actually come up with an equation out from this. Again, we remember that rabbit has 4 legs, chicken has 2 legs. So we can go ahead and set up another equation based on this. So again, this equation that we got here, r plus c equals 80 was the number of heads. So if we add the number of rabbits plus the number of chicken, there's going to be a total of 80 heads. Now we are going to look into these statements that we have here to come up with a second equation. We say that there's a total of 220 legs. So in order that we can set this up, since rabbit has 4 legs, I can go ahead and write 4 times r. That means if we multiply 4 with the number of rabbits, that's the total number of legs of the rabbit, plus 2 times c, that means the chicken has 2 legs, and if we multiply all the number of chickens there, that would be the total number of legs for the chicken. So if we add all the total number of legs for the rabbit and the total number of legs for the chicken, the total is 220. So that is equal to 220. Now from here, we can go ahead and eliminate one of the variables. Again, there's a trick. So what are we going to do is we are going to multiply the first and the second equation with their coefficient. So the coefficient of the second will be multiplied to the first, so times 4. And then please remember there is an invisible 1 in front of the r, so we can go ahead and write 1 right here. So then we distribute this to each of the terms. So just a reminder, when we distribute, it has to be to each one of them, because others missed it and they distributed only to the first one. So it has to be to all of them. So once we distribute this, I'm going to show the work down here after distributing it. So 4 times 1 is just 4r. So this is 4r. And then we have 4 times c is, that's going to be plus 4c. And then that is equal to 4 times 80. And that would be 320. And so I distribute the same thing for the 1 here. So 1 times 4r would be 4r. And then 1 times 2c would be plus 2c. And then, so 1 times 220 is 220. Okay, so then we can go ahead and remember that we are supposed to subtract these two equations. So once we subtract this, 4r minus 4r is 0. We have 4c minus 2c is 2c, and that is equal to 320 minus 220 is 100. And so we can go ahead and divide both sides by 2, divide this by 2. So then we are left with c is equal to 50. So what does it mean? There's gonna be 50 chickens in this farm. So I'm just gonna label this as 50 chickens. Now we are ready to move on to the third step, to plug in the values solved in step 2 to one of the original equations to solve for the other variable. So then we can go ahead and move on to step 3 right here. So I'm just gonna label this as step 3. So we can use any of these equations. I'm just gonna use this first original equation right here. So then that equation is r plus c equals 80. And so the one that we solved was c, which is 50. So we can go ahead and say r plus 50 equals 80. So then we want to solve for r. So we subtract 50 from both sides, minus 50. So then we are left with r is equal to 30. What does the 30 stand for? That represents the number of rabbits. So in this farm, we have 50 chickens and 30 rabbits. And this makes sense because if we add the rabbit and the chicken, the total heads would be 80 because you have 50 plus 30, and so that's 80 heads. Now, if we add all their legs, so since there are 50 chicken and each chicken has 2 legs, so there's a total of 100 legs for the chicken. And then rabbit has there are 30 of them, and then rabbit has 4 legs, so 30 times 4 is 120. So if we add the number of legs for the rabbit, which is 120 plus the number of legs for the chicken, which is 100. So 100 plus 120 is 220. Did you get the same answers as this? Good. Perfect. If you find this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more math videos. See ya!